6:05 as we get it rolling on a Memorial Day Friday here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. And, of course, a weekend where, yes, it is the unofficial start of summer. Many of you have already hit the road. You're hitting the road right now. You're, getting that long weekend started. But let's not forget what this weekend is all about. Recognizing the commitment of members of America's military services and honoring those who lost their lives while defending this great nation. That's what this weekend, that's what Monday, of course, is all about. And we will, of course, be weaving that in and out of our show this morning here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. And I want to fast forward 3 hours from now. Our feature Friday guests, yes, plural, you heard that right. Mike Thompson, Kansas State Senator, and Missouri State Representative Mike Hafner. Both guys are veterans. We've got one from each side of the state line who are now serving our respective state legislatures, and we are looking forward to having them right here on KCMO Talk Radio to get your Memorial Day weekend started. So I hope your day is off to a great start. Yesterday, we broke the biggest news in Kansas City right here on KCMO. That's why, you don't want to miss out. I know you can't listen every second of every day. I get how that goes. I understand. Although you can carry us with you on the KCMO Talk Radio app. But every news outlet in town, John, what are you smiling and smirking at in there?
Well, as I cruised the websites later in the afternoon and I looked at the top story on each TV website, I'm like, been there, done that, got the T-shirt.
That was us.
I was there.
Yep, you got it firsthand. And that, of course, was Quentin Lucas announcing yesterday here on KCMO that they have fired, or shall we say separated, his words, from the employee who put up the tweet last week, effectively doxing Harrison Butker and putting up that since-deleted X post, no longer calling it a tweet, that said Harrison Butker lives in the city of fill-in-the-blank local municipality that is not Kansas City, Missouri. So yesterday we wrapped up the conversation with the mayor. I had not even asked him about this because we hit a lot of other topics, including the fact that he's got a second son coming next month, which I don't know if we're the only people that didn't know that, but he's got a second son coming next month, and then he dropped this bombshell on us.
Let me share just one other thing briefly with you, because I know there were a lot of questions at the end of the last week on the city's social media account. The city has separated from the employee who was responsible for the message. I think that, to me, in many ways resolves a lot of the back and forth that's in the political world. I think there has been accountability from the city of Kansas City. We all look forward to moving on, letting the Chiefs play, letting the city do what it's supposed to do and delivering basic services, and hopefully you and I get to get back to conversations about potholes and everything else under the sun.
All right, that was Quentin Lucas yesterday breaking the news here on KCMO that they had separated, his words, but let's be honest, they fired the employee who was responsible for that tweet, which basically doxed Harrison Butker. Now, this got picked up by every local TV station. You may have seen that clip on the local news last night. Hopefully, they properly credited us here at 95.7 FM KCMO Talk Radio. The Kansas City Star wrote about us. That must pain them greatly. But, I had to reach out to the Kansas City Star, all right? And I'm going to chalk it up, because I'm in a Friday mood, to an honest mistake. Some may feel otherwise, but I'm reading their article, and they say, quote, Kansas City Mayor Quentin Lucas said the city has separated from the employee who was responsible for the message during a Thursday morning interview with conservative radio host Pete Mundo on KCMO Talk Radio 97.5 FM. I don't know if there's rampant dyslexia, if the editors, aren't doing their jobs. I don't know if there's any editors left there at the Kansas City Star, but I'm like, 97.5, what are you doing?
A full-page correction needs to be made for the weekend paper, the Sunday paper.
I want the front page, damn it, issuing an apology for screwing up the signal here on KCMO.
With the picture and logo.
Yes.
Right
Yeah. That's what they need to give us, a full-page ad. 97.5, what are you guys doing? What's that all about? So
there's a long-standing tradition, I think, of the mislabeling radio.
I suppose.
And that competitive media thing.
Maybe so. I mean, listen, I've called them much worse than,
I was going to say,
But listen, we're not doing straight news here, okay? We're having a little fun.
We're not the radio station of record.
No, well, we should be, but you're right. People won't give us that credit. We break more news on this show than any other news program on the radio. Let's be very clear about that. I don't care if you're talking about National Panhandler Radio. You're talking about, what does Ray Stevens call him? Skip and Biffy up the dial a little bit. Skip and Buffy. Yeah. We break more news than all of them. If you want to listen to somebody just rip and read the news from local news outlets, I guess you can find that in other places here on Kansas City Radio, but that's not what we do. We break the news.
They still had to throw in conservative radio.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. That still pisses me off a little bit. Not that I'm ashamed of at all what I believe and how I see the world, but if somebody had broke news on, let's say, Steve Kraski's show or something like that, you think they'd say, uber woke liberal radio host? Or they would just say on local news channel, NPR. That's what they would do. But of course, they have to preface this show with my general worldview and political beliefs and leanings. That's how they always have to frame it. They did the same thing with Ray Stevens a couple of weeks ago when he had on the owner of Strip Chicken, who was talking about leaving Waldo. I'm not afraid. I stand by what I believe and how I see the world, but I just find it insulting because I know what they're doing. They're doing it to label us in a light that they don't see as favorable, that they would never do to any other local media outlet in this town if writing about another radio show. Now, the problem is you rarely see it because this radio show breaks more news than other radio shows do in Kansas City, and we're proud of that. But it's the same old dog and pony show with these guys and gals. So I did send out a note to the author of this article in the Kansas City Star. His name is Bill Lukic. And Bill did apologize. He made it seem like it was an honest mistake. And I said, Billy, no problem there, big boy. It's all good in my book. Okay, have a great weekend. So, it was a cordial response, but I'm like, 97.5? Gosh dang it, can you get the dang signal right for crying out loud? Is that too much to ask? I don't think it is. But you got it here first on KCMO. Now, I heard from Andrew Bailey last night, the Attorney General, because he's the one, of course, who is going after the city for this doxing incident involving Harrison Butker. And I said, basically, is there anything you want to say on your end? I sent him a note last night. Are you going to drop the investigation into Kansas City after the mayor said basically they fired the employee? And here's what Andrew Bailey wrote back to me that I'm going to share with you first here on the air. He said, it's definitely a step in the right direction to ensure accountability. I remain concerned about transparency. My office is currently reviewing whether the city properly responded to my office's demands for records. At the end of the day, the public needs to be assured that proper systems are in place to prevent retaliatory discrimination based on freedom of expression and religion from occurring in the future. I remain committed to that objective and will have more to report early next week after I have the opportunity to evaluate the city's response. So he didn't say he's totally backing off of Kansas City, but he at least said he's going to evaluate what yesterday's decision means for his investigation into Kansas City. So we'll keep an eye on that here on KCMO, and you'll probably hear his response first on 95.7 FM sometime next week. Coming up, Donald Trump had his massive rally in the Bronx yesterday, and even some of his biggest critics had to admit that worked out pretty well for the big guy. That's right. We'll tell you what happened and share with you who said what next on KCMO 95.7. That's right, 95.7 FM. Listen, there's no place I want to be other than right here with you in Kansas City. But if I could have transported myself for a brief moment last night to the Bronx, New York, something I never thought I'd say, I would have loved to have been there at the rally with President Trump last night where he was rocking and rolling through that crowd. Guy had tens of thousands of people there in the Bronx, New York. Now, spent some time there, obviously, worked there before coming out here, but my time in the Bronx was very limited. Couple of Yankees games when I got invited. I hate the Yankees, but, when you get invited to a game, you go. That's about it. That's the extent of my time in the Bronx. Donald Trump was deep in the Bronx. He was in the heart of the Bronx. And he had tens of thousands of people show up. Now, before you sit there and say, oh, come on, it was just a bunch of white people from the surrounding area. It wasn't actually real people from the Bronx. Well, that's not what CNN said last night. Did you hear what CNN said after Donald Trump addressed the crowd in the Bronx? Let me roll this tape from CNN, and you can hear it for yourself from reporters who were on the ground.
What's the crowd like, and what kind of response did he get?
Well, certainly a bigger crowd than I think Democrats would like to see, particularly given this is one of the bluest counties in the entire country. Now, one of the things that was interesting to me is that the Trump campaign said that they were going to micro-target to get people from the community to come to this rally. I wasn't sure what to expect. I've gone to a lot of these rallies across the country, and there are often people who travel hundreds of miles to see Donald Trump, and they're not necessarily part of the community. However, one of the things that I found was that there were a lot of people here that were actually from
the Bronx. You hear her say it there. Huh. How about that there, John Anthony?
Well, I'm just interested in the logistics of having the people in the Bronx. What do they do? Here comes Trump. Hide.
Yeah.
Everybody hide. Or you don't bus them out.
No.
Right?
No. Yeah, this is not Trump busing his preferred people out to the Bronx.
To your point, then, it's not exactly cheap to get there.
No, exactly that, too.
It's not like just, hey, let's go. Hey, let's just go.
Yeah.
No, it's going to cost you some bucks to get over the bridges, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's not a convenient place to get to. It's much easier for people in the neighborhood to show up to the Trump rally in the park in the Bronx and, have a good time and see what's going on. And that's what last night turned into for Donald Trump. And there was, I thought, a very important and interesting cultural moment when these two rappers showed up on stage. Their names are Chef G and Sleepy Hollow. I know, I just busted John's Spotify playlist right there. He's all fired up about Chef G and Sleepy Hollow.
I'll have to add them. Maybe they'll be on Kelsey Jam next year.
But these guys, and listen, I wasn't all that familiar with them. I did a deep dive into them last night. They're big. They've got 14 million subscribers on Spotify. They have 1 million plus followers on Instagram and all their social media accounts. They're drill rappers. Now, if you don't know what drill rapping is, that's okay. I looked it up too myself. Drill rap is a rap that became popular about 10 to 15 years ago in Chicago. It's a style of rap. Don't worry, we got a little music here. You got it there, Mark? You got a little Chef G and Sleepy Hollow? Just play a little bit of this so people can hear what kind of rap this is.
I'm about making money, laughing, joking when there's nothing funny. You wasn't there, can't get nothing from me. I did some things and gained nothing from it. And I was locked down with it, put them chains on me.
It's not bad. It's got a little. Don't worry, that's a clean version I gave you there, Mark. You're okay. I listened to the non-clean version. It wasn't appropriate for the air. But anyway, it's not bad. I could listen to some of that. I mean, it's not like hard rap. It's got some rhythm to it. Okay. I can dig it. All right. Very good job there. So that's these guys, Chef G and Sleepy Hollow. They get up there on stage with Donald Trump last night in the heart of the Bronx. They're from Brooklyn, so they're New York guys. They're enormous in their community. Just because you don't know them doesn't mean that it's not a big deal. They get up there on the stage with Donald Trump last night and take a listen to how this interaction went.
Here as well as rapper Chef G. Does everybody know Chef? Where is Chef G?
Where is he?
Where is he? Come on up, fellas. Rapper Sleepy Hollow. Come on up here, fellas. How are you, man? Hey. Oh, I like that. I want to get that done.
Looking at his grills.
President Trump. Oh, man. One thing I want to say. One thing I want to say. They always gonna whisper your accomplishments and shout your failures. Trump gonna shout the wins for all of us. Make America great again.
Thank you, fellas.
Appreciate you.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, fellas. Thank you. Where are they? Where's Chef G? Where's Sleepy Hollow? Better than Sleepy Joe. Let's get Sleepy Hollow up here. I'm surprised he didn't break that out. But, you know, the cultural moment last night as I'm watching this, it doesn't mean Trump's going to win New York. It doesn't mean he's going to, win the black vote or anything like that. He just has to continue to make inroads. And the recent polling shows him at about 20% with black voters, which is nearly double what he did last time, mostly double what Republicans do in general, and it would be the highest percentage of black voters for a Republican president since Dwight Eisenhower, going back, nearly 70 years at this point. So it matters. It matters not because you know who Chef G and Sleepy Hollow are, but because there are millions of people today waking up who follow these rappers, who see them on stage with Donald Trump last night and then endorse him in this moment in the Bronx. When's the last time you could have even fathomed a Republican candidate? Like, even for those of us who might have thought that a guy like Ron DeSantis would have been better off winning a general election, Ron DeSantis couldn't pull that off last night. He couldn't. There's no way. Nikki Haley couldn't pull that off last night. And here's Donald Trump, a nearly 80-year-old white guy who, yes, has his street cred being a New York City guy, but he comes off pretty cool. He comes off cooler than any other candidate would in that moment on either side of the political aisle, outside of maybe Barack Obama, who obviously has inherent advantages in that department. But he comes off pretty cool. And there's something about him that other guys just don't have and gals just don't have. And it comes off well to people of all backgrounds.
Secondary appeal is if you're kind of the independent or not paying attention, you go, wait, wow, this guy is pissing off a lot of people. I like this.
Yeah.
So you get that buzz.
You do. That's an angle, too, that should not be overlooked. But if you haven't seen that, I will retweet it reshare it on my X page at Pete Mundo. You can see it there for yourself. I mean, it's something that I think culturally matters. And I'm not going to say we're going to look back on that moment and say that was it. But when you stack brick on top of brick, it absolutely plays a difference and plays a role. 913-408-7957 as we roll through the morning here on KCMO. There's a big speech happening in Kansas City at 9:30 today. We'll tell you what that is next. Kicking off your Memorial Day weekend here on KCMO 95.7 FM. It's great to be with you as we get that long weekend started here. But, of course, let's not forget what the weekend is ultimately all about, and that is honoring those who lost their lives while defending this great nation. Today at 9:30, 3 hours from now, there's going to be a press conference that'll be held by Mayor Quinton Lucas and Deputy Chief Mabin. Now, Deputy Chief Mabin, he was the interim police chief before Stacey Graves got the job. It's interesting to me that Joe Mabin's going to be the guy at this press conference today. I do not know if Stacey Graves is out of town or what the deal is, but I thought it was interesting that Mayor Lucas wanted to, I assume, do this press conference today ahead of the holiday weekend. And if his own police chief can't be there, well, I might have done it yesterday to make sure she could be there if she's in town. And I don't know the answer to that, but it's interesting that the chief is not going to be the one with the mayor doing this. So they're going to have a press conference today in 3 hours. And the press conference is going to be to address positive homicide data trends ahead of Memorial Day weekend. Now, of course, last year, we had a record level of homicides here in Kansas City. We ended the year with 182 homicides in KCMO. And, that continued a really bad trend. We broke the record in 2020 with 179. In 2021, we got down to 157. It bounced back up to 170 in 22 and then smashed the record at 182 last year. And that was after Rick Smith was gone. We were told, you get the white police chief out of there, the white male police chief out, and, no one's going to shoot each other anymore. Whoa, what happened with that, huh? I mean, I was told that we were going to live in a utopia once Rick Smith was out of town. But apparently that's not actually how criminals think, so go figure. Anyway, this year, the numbers, I guess, are positive. We have had, and I'm just going to tell you what they're going to say in the press conference because I haven't got the numbers right in front of me. So you can skip the press conference and everything else at 9:30. 53 homicides year to date in Kansas City, Missouri. That means January 1 through yesterday, May 23rd, 53 homicides in Kansas City. Last year at this time, we had 67. So, do the math on that, and we are down, let's see, 14 divided by 67. We are down 21% year to date on homicides. It's a good trend. You'll take that. If that holds up, you'll be the lowest you've been, over the last few years in particular. In 2021, which was our lowest number of the last few years, we had 59 homicides year to date. So in 2021 through May 23rd, we had 59 homicides. We're at 53 this year. So that's a trend in the right direction. Now, Mayor Lucas promised, he made it as a campaign pledge back in 2019 to get homicides below 100 in Kansas City. That is not going to happen because remember, we are now heading into the summer, warmest time of the year. Homicides typically go up. It's just a reality. It's not a positive, but it's a reality. But the trends are good. So if they want to do a little rah-rah before the unofficial start of summer saying, hey, these numbers are going down, we're taking this stuff seriously or more seriously than we have been, and a large part of that is the prosecutor's office, that's great. That's good. If they want to send a message to criminals saying we're coming for you, then guess what? These numbers will continue to come down, which goes to show you, by the way, and this is where there's a bit of a cell phone. If homicides are down 21%, but they haven't changed any kind of gun law in the state of Missouri, then what does that tell you? Maybe it's not ultimately about what your state's gun laws are. Maybe you can do a lot, and most of the work is done by how much the criminals fear law enforcement and how much you get the criminals off the streets before they start committing heinous acts of violence like homicides. And I do believe the Super Bowl parade shooting was a bit of a wake-up call for the prosecutor's office. Now, we know that Gene Peters Baker is done here at the end of the year. We will have a new prosecutor in Jackson County come January of 2025, and hallelujah for that. But it sounds like, and based on some of the stuff we've seen, she is trying to, shall we say, do some more of the right thing during her final year in office. And I think part of that wake-up call was ultimately the Super Bowl parade shooting. So that's a good thing. That's a step in the right direction. Now, I'd like to hear from everybody running for prosecutor on the Democratic side and the Republican side that, hey, you know what? We are going to make sure that the worst of the worst are put behind bars. They're not going to come out here and they're not going to be allowed to terrorize our communities right here in Kansas City. Because who's paying the biggest price? The poorest communities, where all the criminals are. Not the people off Ward Parkway. I mean, they might have to deal with some petty theft. But the people who are dealing with homicides, who are hearing gunshots in the streets, they're in the poorest of the poor communities here around Kansas City. They're the ones getting screwed by the soft on crime, bad prosecution. It's them. It's not the, high-end, fancy, cocktail hour people on Ward Parkway. That is not the individual who is getting hit most by bad prosecution. I was driving down to the plaza last week for a lunch meeting, and I saw a big sign for John Gromowski. He's one of the Democrats running in Jackson County for prosecutor. And as I understand it, he's got a lot of those big money ties in Jackson County. That's why he's got a lot of dough if you look at his campaign coffers. And good for him. But, man, I'll tell you right now, I had him on the show a few weeks back. Seemed like a nice guy, but I gave him every opportunity to question and call out the current prosecutor's office. And he works in it. He works in the prosecutor's office. He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. And frankly, maybe that'll change as the campaign rolls along. But anybody who won't criticize the current leadership, I would never consider voting for. Never in a million years if I was a Jackson County resident. But that's what you're going to get this morning from Mayor Lucas. They're going to tell you that homicides are trending in the right direction, and that's good, but there is still a ways to go. But if they want to do, a little, I don't want to call it a happy dance because you still got 53 people who have been killed in this town since January 1. But if they want to make sure that people understand they're taking this stuff seriously, then sure, sign me up. I'll get behind them on that front, and I think that we all should as we approach the holiday weekend here on KCMO. And between that and their insistence that they're going to take crime more seriously on places like the Plaza, the police are going to be patrolling the Plaza, Stacey Graves made clear, and other entertainment districts this summer more than they have in previous years. That's good. Sign me up for that. I think that's exactly what the people of Kansas City want to hear. And it's also what those of us who don't live in Kansas City want to hear. Because we can go spend our money in Kansas City, or we can spend it somewhere else, right? We can go to Town Center. We can go up to Zona Rosa. We can spend our money in a lot of different places in this town. And people want to hear that if they're going to go spend a night and a decent amount of money on the Plaza, they don't have to worry, or there should be less of a worry about ending up, hearing gunshots coming up down the street, or burnouts happening, spinouts, whatever you want to call those things, sideshows. Don't want to deal with that. Hey, yeah, I got a nice meal, it cost me $200 and I got a sideshow to cap off the night. Thankfully, I didn't get shot. No, not interested. And most people aren't in dealing with that kind of an environment. 913-408-7957 as we roll through the morning here on KCMO. Quentin Lucas did tell us yesterday, by the way, that he was in Detroit this week helping out in some swing states. He said he will be doing more of that in the months ahead, which tells me he is angling for a position in the administration if Joe Biden gets reelected. But I want to play a clip because it just dropped yesterday of him in Detroit. And this is Quentin Lucas this week in Detroit. He dropped this on his social media pages. He told us yesterday that he was there 2 days ago. He's going to be working in some of the swing states on behalf of Joe Biden. And here's what Quentin Lucas sounded like.
Can y'all get out the vote? Will y'all be able to bring people to the polls with you?
Does that remind you of anybody? Who does that sound like to you? Sounds like a cover band to somebody, doesn't it?
An Aldi brand?
Yeah, Aldi brand maybe, shall we say? One more time.
Can y'all get out the vote? Will y'all be able to bring people to the polls with you?
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. Who do you hear there? Who does that sound like to you?
Gentleman who is supporting his candidate. He's not doing nothing. You don't have to worry about him. You should. This is what I mean about folks not being focused.
Doesn't that sound like Barack Obama to you? Or someone who wants to sound like Barack Obama? I'm just picturing Mayor Lucas, late at night. He's in his boxer briefs. He's looking in the mirror, getting set for bed, brushing his teeth. And he's kind of doing his Obama impression in the mirror. And his wife's yelling at him. She's pregnant now. She's like, Dad, don't wake up the kid. Don't wake you. You wake up the kid. You're in big trouble, buddy. All right? Put on the fan in that bathroom at least while you're working on that Obama impression. Would you please? I mean, he sounds pretty good. He's got it down pat. I will give it to him. He does a very good Barack Obama, Quentin Lucas.
Can y'all get out the vote? Will y'all be able to bring people to the polls with you?
It sounds like a young Barack Obama. That's what I hear.
There's a cadence to it.
Yes. There is a cadence to it.
1, 2.
Yeah.
Pause.
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, yes. Mm-hmm. You got it down pat there, John.
The Obama haiku.
Yeah. That's exactly what I hear as well. Now, it's very different, of course, from the guy when he talks on this show.
Let me share just one other thing briefly with you, because I know there were a lot of questions at the end of the last week on.
That's him talking on this show versus him in Detroit.
Can y'all get out the vote? Will y'all be able to bring people to the polls with you?
Listen, he's got major political aspirations, and he's damn good at it. Whether you like his policies or not, whether you like the job he's done in Kansas City, the guy has massive political ambition. And He's a very good talker, much like Barack Obama was. He knows how to talk to his audience based on who he's speaking with. That is a political skill set that Barack Obama had. He could talk to a minority community in a certain way, and then he could go talk to a, majority white community in a certain way. And it worked out incredibly well for him. All right? 2-time president, of course, 2-term president. And now the guy's living large on Martha's Vineyard and, multiple other homes. It's amazing how that works. And Quentin Lucas is trying to figure out what his path is. It was a bit easier for Barack Obama being in a blue state like Illinois. State senator, one-time U.S. senator, and before you know it, the guy is president of the United States. Amazing rocket ship ascension to the White House. Quentin Lucas is sitting in a red state. So he can't go from, mayor of Kansas City to statewide office to run for president. He's got to figure out the Mayor Pete Buttigieg model. Now, Mayor Pete was here last Thursday. He's now the transportation secretary, and he was the mayor in a city 1/5 the size of Kansas City. It's comical. But he was a good talker, and he was gay. Mayor Lucas has much better political chops than Mayor Pete. Much better. And by the way, he's the mayor of a city that is 5 times the size of Mayor Pete Buttigieg. So he's probably saying to himself, what the heck? I mean, gosh, I could have this kind of ascension. And he's good on TV, smooth talker. He's doing this show every week for the better part of 4 years now. And frankly, I think that one of the reasons the mayor does this show is because it helps him with his media chops. We ask him questions he's not going to get around town. He's using this in part, and I'm fine with that, but it's helpful to him from a training perspective to come on this show and get these kind of questions that he's not going to get in other places.
And he was on the show before he was elected mayor.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Our relationship goes way back. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a cordialness. There's a mutual respect. Even when we disagree on a lot of things, there's a mutual respect for this show, just like there is from us for his office. There's no doubt about that.
He understands the value of media for sure from the get-go.
No doubt about it. He does. And that's part of the reason that he comes on here. And we appreciate that every Thursday morning at 7:30. But that's why it's not shocking to me when the report came out last week from Tony's Kansas City that Mayor Q is potentially a name to watch for the HUD secretary. That's housing and urban development. That's a job that was held by Ben Carson under Donald Trump if Joe Biden gets reelected. Marcia Fudge was the HUD secretary under Joe Biden. Now there's some interim person as HUD secretary. Joe Biden may not name a permanent HUD secretary until or if he wins re-election, and Quentin Lucas could be on and is expected to be on that short list. And that's why when he said yesterday on the show he's going to be around, swing stating for Joe Biden, I'm like, that's not a coincidence. He's looking for that gig. Joe Biden getting reelected could very well result in Quentin Lucas going to Washington, D.C. sometime in 2025. So, I don't think he's going to Detroit in his spare time just for his jollies. There's a reason he's going to a place like Detroit this week, and you're probably going to see more of that. More likely in the fall. He's got a kid coming next month, so, I assume he's going to take a little time off. Not Mayor Pete, 12 weeks or whatever it was, 2 months off, for his paternity leave. But he's going to take a little time off, I imagine, and then he could be right back to the hustle, especially once we get into the fall. He could find himself in, a lot of the swing states, and he alluded to that yesterday. And in the meantime, he will keep working on his best impression of Barack Obama as he looks at himself in the mirror right after he brushes his teeth.
Can y'all get out the vote? Will y'all be able to bring people to the polls with you?
That's right. Well, he certainly does a much better job than Hillary Clinton.
I don't feel no ways tired.
That's right. I don't feel
too far.
Come too
from
far.
Where I started from.
Yeah, that's right, Hillary. That's right, Hillary Clinton. Leave it to Quentin Lucas. Would you please, Hillary? Come on now. Coming up next on KCMO. The stock market is up. People think it's down. Why might that be? What's going on there? We'll get to it right after the news on KCMO.
God bless the USA.
It is Friday of Memorial Day weekend. Thanks for making KCMO Talk Radio part of it, as, of course, we make sure we are observing what this weekend is all about and that is the men and women who lost their lives in service of this great nation. And it still is. I don't care what anybody tells you. If you are not proud to be an American, even if you don't agree with a lot of the things going on right now, let's get back in line here, because this still is the greatest nation in the history of mankind. So, obviously, we'll be talking to a lot of folks throughout the morning on this front. Matt Naylor, the president of the the National World War I Museum and Memorial, is going to be here at 7:50 this morning. Don't miss that conversation on KCMO. In the meantime, we're getting set to open the markets here in about an hour and a half. And I thought this was interesting yesterday. I saw this from MarketWatch.com. And a new poll is offering fresh evidence that the U.S. economy's performance when it comes to the markets is not resonating with many Americans. So what's one thing that you hear a lot from the president on these days? Whoa, look at the stock market, 40,000 on the Dow. And I hear that from some of his big supporters as well. Have you looked at your 401k lately? Well, once in a while I do. And yeah, I'm, happy with it. Happier now than I was a year ago, that's for sure. But this poll was interesting. Stocks are up about 10% this year on average across the board. But nearly half of Americans think they're down. 49% of respondents to this poll conducted by Harris said incorrectly that the S&P 500 was down for the year, despite the fact that the U.S. stock benchmark actually scored a record high this past Tuesday, stretching its year-to-date rise to about 12%. This is following a 24% gain last year. So what's that all about? Why might that be? Well, because even if your 401k is up, unless you're at retirement or, within, let's say, the 5-year window of retirement, it doesn't mean anything to you. Like, it's nice to look at. Maybe you get a little rush, you get a little smile on your face if you see your 401k up 10% year to date. But it has nothing to do with how you're living your life today. Unless, of course, you're approaching or nearing that retirement or in that retirement. Doesn't matter. Like, if you're sitting there like me or like many of you, you've got kids, you're running off to the office, you're thinking about what's ahead this weekend, you're running them to practice here, you got school events there, all these different things you've got planned for the summer. It's nice that your 401k is up. But that's 20, 30, 40 years down the road. It doesn't impact you today. In fact, you're probably saying to yourself, gosh, I wish I could put more into that 401k, but I can't right now because I need it to live. Because my cost of living is up 20% over the last 3-4 years. So what's it really worth? What does it really mean? So most people, I think, probably perceive the markets to be an influence on what their life actually is in that moment. And we know the stock market, it's great when it's up, but it's not really a reflection on where the economy is on Main Street. Which is why, when Trump was doing his 4 years and talking about the markets, I'd always be like, dude, stop with the stock market thing. Now, his economy was good and much better across the board. So it was different when he would brag about the stock market. But I'd be like, brag about the things that matter to Main Street. Because Wall Street and Main Street are two different things. Wall Street, in part, is being driven in large part by the AI boom. The way the Magnificent Seven stocks, the NVIDIA, the Google, the Meta, Amazon, Tesla, how they're performing. They are driving the stock market right now. And good for them. I mean, NVIDIA just did I see NVIDIA did a 10-1 stock split here yesterday or a couple of days ago, if I saw that right? I mean, they're on fire right now. NVIDIA soared more than 9% this week after their recent earnings. So it's a monster number. They're driving the markets in large part because of the artificial intelligence boom. But that has nothing to do with what small businesses are feeling today around America or what everyday workers are feeling today across America. If this president believes that he's going to get some massive boost because of the stock market, that's not how it's going to be. Unless you're talking about boomers that are at or right around retirement. And, they've got their home paid off and the whole thing, and the kids are out of the house. They're the ones who are not feeling the pinch. The working class folks across America. Parents right now are the ones who are saying in a recent poll, that they're the ones who feel like the economy's not in a great place right now. There's a lot more of them. And they're the ones who are pretty fed up with where things are at today. Now, when it comes to the markets here on a micro level, the Dow was down 600 points yesterday. That's the worst day of 2024. All the three major indexes closed lower. Why? Well, they closed lower because the Federal Reserve spooked the markets on Wednesday afternoon. They released their notes from their last policy meeting, and the minutes showed that various officials said they would be willing to raise interest rates if necessary, and that there were doubts as to whether financial conditions are restrictive enough to keep inflation from resurging. Now, last year, the markets all baked in 3, 4, 5, 6 rate cuts. That seemed crazy to most of us who see the world for what it is right now, but they assumed that the Fed would start cutting rates this year and that the restrictive monetary policy would start to come back to where it was. It never made sense on why they would do that, but that's what people assumed. Well, now they're realizing not only are rate cuts unlikely to happen this year, you might get a rate increase at some point. I don't think it's going to happen before the election, but I could see post-election an interest rate hike potentially taking place. But on top of that, Goldman Sachs CEO David Solomon said Wednesday at an event hosted by Boston College that the Fed, he believes, is not going to cut rates this year. He said, quote, "I'm still at 0 cuts. I think we're set up for stickier inflation." So between that quote from a Goldman Sachs CEO and then the Fed minutes that were released that showed the Fed would be willing to raise interest rates, which is the opposite of what anybody thought was going to happen this year, that's how you get a market that suddenly is like, okay, maybe something is about to happen or maybe stuff is stickier on Main Street than we realize. And when you talk about record levels of credit card debt, talk about some of the other issues that, of course, this economy is dealing with right now, that doesn't shock me one bit. The only way you get a rate cut is if the employment market starts getting a little dicey. If we see unemployment tick up, if people start losing their jobs more so than they have been, because we basically have full employment right now, that's the only way we end up in a situation where rate cuts are even on the table this year. Yesterday, of course, as you're hearing at the top and bottom of the hour on Fox News, Donald Trump found himself in the Bronx. Just unprecedented when you think of a Republican presidential candidate, never mind a guy like Donald Trump, going to the Bronx and drawing out tens of thousands of people. And it wasn't just what he said that mattered. And, I'm trying to listen to some of this last night as I'm, wrapping up dinner and we got bath time going on. And, Charlotte, who's 11 weeks old now, is trying to get ready for bed. And I'm doing her bedtime and the whole thing. So I'm trying to listen to the rally as all this is going on. And it was a little chaotic around the house, but I got the gist of it. It was, what you would expect from Donald Trump. It was very good. It was rah, rah, America, MAGA, all that stuff. But it's also what happened before the rally, before Trump started speaking, that I was fascinated by. And I want to play this. This is a lady, just a local resident. I'm not sure how she got herself to the stage. But she got up there and she just went off on everything. And her rant here was absolutely tremendous. And it's something that I haven't seen anybody really talk about at all over the last 12 hours since this rally took place in the Bronx. And I think this applies to not just what's going on in New York or in the country. It applies to Kansas City. Take a listen to this lady before Donald Trump started speaking and what she had to say.
Donald Trump to deliver for our communities, to make the major investments. Let's replace the drugs and the guns with hammers and nails and drills and steel workers. Use our young men that are involved in the criminal justice system to rebuild the housing. Use them, pay them decent salary so they can afford to take care of their children and their family and help lift us up out of poverty. Keep your welfare. We don't want your welfare. We want jobs. Create jobs. Decent paying jobs. Educational opportunities. Initiatives that'll help our young men avoid incarceration. free to commit more crime. Put real initiatives in place that will save their lives. Sometimes jail, sometimes people are not arrested, they're rescued. So when we continuously have this revolving door, we're actually setting our young men and women up to be killed, to kill themselves or someone else.
That was freaking awesome. That lady, and I will reshare that on my X page at Pete Mundo. I will just post it up there so you can see it for yourself. She's fired up. She's holding a picture of her late son who served this country. And there's so much there to dig into that I wish Gene Peters Baker, our Jackson County prosecutor, would hear that snippet, hear that speech. Something tells me Gene's not a regular listener. Although it's funny, yesterday Nick Haynes texted me. He was down at the Union Station. They had their big rollout for their Disney event they're going to be doing down there this summer. And he's like, yeah, people are reaching out saying that they hear me on your show all the time. I'm like, I know, Nick. We know what's going on. We see the numbers here, my man. I'm not shocked by that, but it's always nice to hear from someone like Nick Haynes. But anyway, that last part of her message is so important. When she talks about stop letting criminals back out on the streets. In fact, prison is sometimes exactly where these people need to be to save them. And there's been, of course, this part of the, woke virus that part of this nation has experienced the last few years is that no ramifications for your actions is how we actually help people. Not holding criminals to account is how we help them because they're victims of society. No, they're scumbags, they're thugs, they broke the law, they should be in prison. I don't care who they are, what their backgrounds are, they should be in prison. Because not only is it best for society, it oftentimes is best for them. And that's what you heard her say there at the end of that speech. Sometimes prison is where these people get rescued. Whereas if you have that revolving door that she alluded to, back out on the streets committing crime, it's the same people shooting at each other and killing each other. That's what it is. It's the same people. Especially when you have a criminal justice system like here in Jackson County that ends up being just a revolving door where criminals oftentimes are not paying the price that they should for their actions. They're back out doing the same things that they were doing, and they end up oftentimes doing worse things than what they previously had done. They go from, dealing drugs, involved with drugs, busted for that, to ending up, as a homicide count on either side of the equation. And then when she talks about, keep your welfare, we want jobs. Gosh, isn't that just perfect? I inherently believe that the vast majority of Kansas Cityans and Americans want to work and want to have a purpose. And there's no doubt, depending on where you grow up, it's easier to do that in some capacity. I don't deny that for a second. But when you also get caught up in that environment, and when it's all you know, that the government is here to take care of you, when that's how you're raised, when that's your mindset, when that's how you grow up, well, guess what? You're going to take that same mindset as well. And it's going to permeate from generation to generation to generation like a virus. And you're never going to break out of it. You're never going to break that string. And it's refreshing to hear things like that. Instead of the whole thing, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help you, it's how do we actually help people help themselves? And, when she's like, get rid of the drugs and the guns and let's get the hammers and the nails, I'm like, let's go, lady. Woo! I love it. And that's what we need to hear more of. So to hear that was just tremendous at that rally yesterday. And then there was this moment as well where former President Trump brings up two big-time rappers. Now, I'm not going to lie, Chef G and Sleepy Hollow are not on my playlist. But I know you're going to be shocked by that. You can't believe it, right?
Talk about a bombshell.
These are drill rappers. It's a style of rap. I did a deep dive on this last night, so I knew what the hell I was talking about. They're drill rappers is what they call them. It's a style of rap music that became popular in Chicago in the early 2010s. They're from Brooklyn. I mean, they've got massive social media followings, million plus for each of them. They got 14 million subscribers on Spotify. They know what they're doing. But Trump brought him up on stage last night, and it created quite a moment.
Here as well as rapper Chef G. Does everybody know Chef? Where is Chef G?
Where is he? Where's
Chef?
Where's Chef G?
Come on up, fellas. Rapper Sleepy Hollow.
There's Sleepy Hollow. He beats Sleepy Joe. Give me Sleepy Hollow.
Come on up here, fellas. How are you, man? Hey. Oh, I like that. I want to get that done.
He wants his grills.
President Trump. Oh, man. One thing I want to say. One thing I want to say. They always gonna whisper your accomplishments and shout your failures. Trump gonna shout the wins for all of us. Make America great again.
20, 30,000 people going nuts there. Chef G and Sleepy Hollow, who I may have to add to the playlist here coming up this week. And I actually pulled up some of the music. It wasn't bad. I kind of, I liked it. It wasn't that hard rap. It was like, it was good. It was an easy listen. So I may have to add them to the playlist here coming up for the long weekend. I don't know if I want to add it to the bumper music for the show, but, I thought they did a pretty good job from what I heard. But don't discount that. Like, there's a lot of people that follow those two guys that obviously have no idea that Trump was doing this rally last night, but they're going to see it on social media. They're going to see it on social media. And maybe that's going to turn some heads. So just, man, things are changing. The parties are realigning. Meantime, maybe Biden can get Hillary Clinton to do her best black impression.
Don't feel no ways tired. I come too far.
That's right.
From where I started
That's
from.
right. That's right. Break it out, girl.
Nobody told me that the road would be easy.
Atta girl. Atta girl. There you go. Hillary Clinton. Maybe we can break that out. Meantime, Trump's got two, legit street rappers from Brooklyn showing up saying MAGA. What a world. Would not have predicted this 3 years ago. I'll tell you that right now. Holy cow.